appreciate everybody's time. We're going to get started because I know a lot of folks are on schedule for a lot of things, and so let's get this. Uh, let's get this. Whoop, sorry, that's how much out of practice I am, huh, team? I told you that's going to be a problem. So, um, all right, what is going on here? There we go. Everything's a little off. So a couple of things in most of our presentations, and probably if you've joined this webinar or watching it post, there's a couple of things that I like to talk about all the time, which is basically the environment that most high growth companies and their products are dealing with. And really, that's the root problem of a lot of the challenges organizations face, really on both sides of the equation here, right? And so the environment is extremely complex, right? And it's just getting worse, right? Depending on your product, what verticals you're selling to, bank, finance, healthcare, et cetera, and then all the way down to, how many people are involved. And so it's just a massively complex task to truly onboard. And when I say onboard, again, I'm going to qualify some of this. One, typically, we're not talking about simple product onboarding or simple service onboarding. We mostly are involved in helping with more complex offerings, SaaS products, uh, more complex services, not simple tools where onboarding might be, super easy and fast. Typically, our clients and where we provide the greatest amount of value and the greatest amount of challenges, obviously, lie is these products and services that are extremely or considered more complex type of ecosystem. So it's just getting more and more challenging. And if your product is over 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, $1 million deployment, these numbers all continually go up and the problems just get harder and harder to keep everybody kind of organized and really moving the entire process forward. So I think you all can, agree with that. It's nobody's first rodeo here. That's typically where the challenges lie. And then when we talk about onboarding itself, um, when I say onboarding or what we consider onboarding really is more this entire full life cycle. Especially if you're a SaaS product on this call, this is it's kind of an interesting trap that many SaaS companies have gotten into where when they say onboarding, they really just mean configuration, like getting the client configured and nothing about the actual um, process of adoption, right? And post launch is where the adoption happens. You get it set up, and then obviously it's going live. People need to be using it. And that's also kind of a sneaky way. I'm not saying people did this on purpose to boost their numbers, but I have seen numbers. I'm kind of having fun with everybody here. I have seen numbers from companies where they say their TTV is 48 days. And then we get into it and I'm working with them and I'm like, I thought you said 48 days. Well, it's 48 days until they're live. Well, live is nothing. That's not time to value. It's just live. Where's the V part of TTV? It's not TTL, right? Time to live. It's TTV. Like, is the customer getting any value out of this? Oh no, no. It then takes us, whatever, and you're like, well, then your TTV is in 48 days, right? And so don't get suckered into that. So when we're thinking about stuff, we really are trying to look at it from both implementation and adoption, and that's very critical. And you just got to be honest with yourself, right? And I know they weren't trying to sham wow me, right? They were literally in their mindset. That's what onboarding is. They're looking at it from a technical perspective. Hey, clients up, let's do this, but really it's not fully onboarding, right? And so there's misses on both sides of that. And if you are accidentally doing that, you're not alone. Trust me, hundreds of our clients, they say onboarding and you ask them like, how is the client trained to be adopted and what's the process? Are you doing pilots? Are you doing small group? Are you doing divisional training and then rolling it out to the globals team, right? Like there's no real plans of adoption a lot of the time. And so that alone can be a huge value benefit, obviously, of going through this process. And the kind of the topic today is onboarding obviously can be, hurting the org. And a lot of that is just through natural growth, right? And if you're growing fast, you're bringing on a lot of clients, you might have limited teams, and so what I'm just kind of doing today here is kind of going to give you kind of those symptoms again that might be causing some of the challenges, and then kind of roadmaps on how to identify that yourself. We have a megaton. That's a real thing, right? Megaton. Yeah. We have a ton of resources on our site, and I'll refer to things and I'll include most of those in this follow up. But obviously, in a general webinar, I can only go so deep into certain topics. A lot of these topics, like TTV and many of the things I've already mentioned, we have deeper dive webinars we've already done on those with resources and deep dives, or of course, related articles and white papers around that. So please don't hesitate and don't fret if you're like, man, I wish he talked more about how to do X. Just hop onto the site and you'll be able to grab it there, right? So let's kind of jump into it a little bit. Okay, so the hidden growth killer, because that's today's mantra or topic. And again, this is typically for some organizations, the challenges are kind of hidden. So you know, devil is in the details, as everybody knows, right? But also knowledge is power, visibility creates it, and a lot of times it's not because the companies were trying to not have visibility to this stuff. They've just been literally running like crazy. If any of you have been part of a high growth, let's call it a SaaS company, where you're doubling, tripling, quadrupling, at a pretty fast pace, raising capital, lots of things. It's a whirlwind for that period of time. It's always a whirlwind, obviously, but you know what I'm getting at. And it's kind of moving fast. And so sometimes it's just staying alive at that point, and you don't really have the resources and the time to kind of step back, reflect, and really build out systems and processes to truly help with that scale. But you'll start to get to it. And that's one of the things the hidden growth killer, I'm going to kind of help you identify some things, and some of the most easiest things. It sounds, I always have fun with this stuff. Like, it's not rocket science, right? But like a couple of we were working with a SaaS company, global, yeah, busy group. And we were brainstorming some things with them, sharing a lot of best practices, obviously, of what we would recommend for them. Of course, everybody knows on this call, we have a world-class tool to deliver all the onboarding and bring everybody together. You know that, our firm. But the interesting thing was we had brainstormed with them for a certain complex situation, some ideas, right? Of like, we think this plus tracking this and doing this will work really well. I always like to say the easiest way to solve 90% of these problems is to think through it, understand the challenge at hand, and then just go talk to your customer. Like, literally, the customer that just got finished doing onboarding, we would hop back up on, and we'd be like, hey, we really appreciate your feedback. We're looking to be the best that we can be on this process. What did you like? Was there a correct amount of visibility here? Data? And the client was like, yeah, this would be great if you could do this, this, and this. I think that'd be awesome. Wow, thank you so much for asking. We really feel that that's awesome that you're able to have that kind of consultative and reflective conversation. It's literally, not to give all the secrets away, but so much of the time there's stress of like, we got to figure this out. A lot of times, yes, it's about bringing in best practices, bringing in kind of process changes, maybe, but then literally just talking to the clients, and they're there. This process that I'm talking to you about here, you should be doing this year round, like that little experiment I was just talking to, because it does greatly affect your TTV, them seeing value, their happiness, reducing the confusion. Of course, ultimately, we're trying to make you scalable, which is mean being able to do more with less, but also a predictable experience, right? Like, that's really what we're talking about here, right? And a lot of churn happens in that first 90 days. Like, you might not lose them, like air quote lose them, like you're not losing the money. They don't call up and cancel, but they won't renew in a year, or they won't renew in the 2-year period. Basically, you're losing a lot of revenue. And in high growth companies, a lot of times they're kind of hiding that just because they're bringing in so many new clients. There's kind of a loss of kind of the equalization there. Make sense, team? So we're going to kind of talk about this more, but it's ultimately about having the best experience possible for the customers. And I always say, yes, we can propose those, we implement them, we drive them, but then also let's just candidly get their feedback on every single step. And it just becomes that much easier and that much more beneficial, right? So again, kind of looking back, it's growth company. or just a company that isn't maybe new. You just hit a growth spurt. You found a targeted opportunity. A lot of times, these are kind of the reasons why a lot of things, the processes aren't standardized. You got a couple of rainmakers on the CSM side, and the other parts of the team maybe aren't as strong. I think that's like every sales team, right? Like all the same kind of things um, start to happen. The complexity of the clients, a lot of companies, when they're founded, they work with one type of client, but then they start now adding all these other veins of clients, different industries. That brings more complexity, more dynamic-ness and things to the onboarding experience, and you might not be handling that well. So, because it's not just about onboarding a single type, happy path, one client type, a lot of things start to come into play. If you're really rocking and rolling, it can be really impressive of all the different client types and all the different integrations needed by every client type, all sorts of stuff that really makes their experience, um, awesome to do that. And I said, again, you guys all know we sell a product and we work with world-class clients. Of course, we have a tool to monitor all this, but really what today's goal is to help you identify some of that and then looking at, ways to kind of start to make changes for success. If in your team's ecosystem, you got a lot of timeline slipping, and there's always a you know, but this, but that. The real symptom, yeah, is that the client questions. Um, that's really awesome if you can identify that, because that's frequently you can look at if you have support channels or other vehicles, or obviously hopefully your communication is centralized. If you don't have clear onboarding metrics, like just regular, not just TTV, we use like 13 different metrics on things. And I'll include that in my follow up. That's a whole presentation in itself. But there's the metrics, everybody kind of leans towards the common fun ones, TTV, right? But there's a lot of things you can start to look at if you have your onboarding process broken out in phases, right? That's very, very important, or AK milestones. We don't care what you call it, but we're looking at different gates of the experience and then making sure progression is happening at time. Latency, I mean, literally, like I care about latency between requests. Most of our clients use some sort of mutual plan kind of concept where you're mutually coming up with things and assigning things out, how the assignments are going, are they timely coming back? There's a lot of low level stuff that you can start to identify, and what you're ultimately trying to do is prevent forest fires, right? You're just like Smokey the Bear, right? See something, say something, you see smoke, you can find it sooner, you're going to be able to solve it faster and keep everything on track. So these are a lot of the symptoms. If there's a lot of buts on that, um, the reactiveness of it, I think is, you can get that sense. You've all been a part of a team where it feels like, man, we are not on the offense. And that's kind of how I always look at, like, do we feel like we're on the offense? Like we're really we're shepherding this well. It's going well. They're shepherding it well. They're doing well. You know what that feeling feels like. And so if the team isn't feeling that, then you like immediately know that that's um, yeah, it's the outcome, right? Like these symptoms you can ignore, and a lot of times people just try to throw more people at the problem. That's not going to help. That's actually going to be worse. There's no clear owners. All sorts of things start to happen, and so it's about identifying these kinds of things. So when you're not standardized for scale, and again, everybody feels like standardized or playbooks, we'll talk about it, is like it's not that simple. We're complex. Our product's complex. Yes, I like to think of it more as experiences and then guardrails or a framework around it. And I'll have a slide here in a minute about that. And so don't think it has to be that rigid where it's programmatic and super. No, but when clients are coming in, depending on who they are, what product or service they're getting from you, what their environment is like, there's an experience there, and there's experiences in that for different roles too, roles. And so there might be different experiences within one experience. And so your target customer, you might be working with finance, you might be working with the accounting team, you might be working with Obviously the implementation team, right? So there's an experience, but then within that experience, there are multiple stakeholder types or personas. If everybody uses different terminologies, but that's what we care about. And it's getting those to be repeatable and consistent so that you can truly scale, increase velocity of everything that's going on for you. And of course, every one of your CS leaders is providing a consistent experience to the customer. And that affects, especially if you're a growing company, you're going to be adding new team members. And if you're a leader on this call, you want to have confidence that every client is being treated the same way in a good way. But that same way is not necessarily identical between the clients. It's within the environments that each one should be doing. Again, easiest way to explain is if you're deploying stuff to a credit union, that's different than deploying stuff to a bank. If any of you are in financial know that, that's a huge difference. And that's also different if you're deploying into a hospital, right? Or a manufacturing facility or whatever. And so those are just different experiences, but they themselves can be consistent. But it costs a huge amount of money. Not to set up. It's if you're not doing that, they don't feel like you have the experience within their vertical. And a good 30%, in some cases for you guys, it's higher. The reason why your company was selected was because you were perceived as experts. And onboarding itself is not just, again, implementation, turn the screw, do this. What clients are typically also looking from you, is expert guidance, coaching, and reasons why to do it differently or how to set them up. Does that make sense, everybody? That's a very critical piece, especially as the dollar amount goes up. So consultative onboarding, strategic onboarding, rethinking. Just because you've done it this way, the client's done it, maybe changing how that's done now. And so that's what they're really looking for during that. And if you're not providing that, then they're not as obviously jacked up for your solution. Um, the underlying theme, of course, is TTV. And again, give me a real V, not a BSV. But the point being there is there's so much pressure, especially depending on the size of the investment and industry, of demonstrating value sooner, soonest, sooner, immediately in your onboarding experience. I'm not joking. Why would I? Um, we have, if you're one of these clients where your product or service is like a multi-year, literally, kind of deployment, or even a 6-month deployment, we've helped clients kind of create these crescendo moments pretty quick and fast. So just bear with me as I kind of explain, because I can't all, everybody on this is different backgrounds, different kind of, but you can think about it from this perspective. Yes, you're not going to go live in training and adopting until 6 months, but the people paid for your service, they cut you a check for 150,000. They start to go into your onboarding process. Sometimes with our clients, we'll help them create kind of this it's not even a real pilot. You're not going to market yet. If you can, pilot is a great way to show victory very quickly, or only deploying one module of your 3 modules. I think everybody's getting the tonality of where I'm going here. But what we like to do is to, at minimum, show the leadership team who has spent a lot of money a draft of where we're going to kind of see where the future lies and what opportunities they're going to be once this is fully ramped out. This does 2 things. Maybe it's 3, but the way I like to frame it is 2 things. One, it inspires the team you're working with, meaning your team and the client's team, that we're going to have a success moment here so that they can get recognized. This is team spirit kind of stuff. Very, very critical, right? Because they still got to work with you for the next 4 months to get this done or whatever, right? So we want them to look like rock stars themselves. 2, it makes the people who chinged, gave you the cash and the money, to feel recognized that, hey, if you're all in business, a half of the battle is trust. They're like, man, I feel really good about picking these guys because look, they really understand our problem. Yes, we're not live yet. I get that. but they obviously are working towards something, and I see it here, and it's coming to reality at some level, and this is going to be extremely exciting. Don't want to get you guys off the hook here, but it's also a very big moment of cross-selling. You're going to be like, cross-selling? How the hell are we cross-selling? We're just onboarding them. Think through it. They start to tell you more and more and more problems, and this stuff they didn't even know you could help with helps add value to the current contract, and of course the opportunity for cross-selling. So very long-winded explanation to TTV, but it's that important sometimes to create these crescendo moments for that velocity and momentum and all sorts of kind of concepts around that. The other thing we coach most of our clients on, and our tools supports how to get to TTV, is a lot of times based on in your kickoff meetings and other stuff, doing pre-mortems. So many of our clients use the concept of pre-mortems with the client. You're talking to your client, and you basically say to each other, if this is going to fail in the next 3 months with us working together, why do we think that is? And where do we think that is in this process? Some of you might be like, what did you just say? Did you just say in onboarding, in the kickoff meeting, you're asking the client, where do they see this failing? Why would you ever do that? No. You want to see people react in such a positive way. It's amazing. So having that candid conversation, building those concerns into your mutual plan can make you get to your TTV way faster, extremely faster. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Just those couple of words right there that I've been saying for many clients can actually create a huge shift in success and timing of the actual onboarding process. Um, we were joking, like just a real world example. They needed something from IT. The timeline said this. They needed something from IT. And so they're like, okay, I'm making this up. I'm not going to disclose our client or their stuff, but the spirit of it was very close to this. Oh, great. We're going to be needing that in, let's just go, what are we in March now? We're going to need that roughly April 20th in the schedule. And somebody said, oh, well, I'm glad we said that, because the person who oversees that is going to be on maternity leave, and they're going to be gone April 1st through May, June, whatever. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, everybody's like, OMG, like, we know that now. Can we flip the schedule a little bit so that we can get the stuff? Make sense? Like, it's that kind of questions and candidness with your customer during the onboarding process can get you to that TTV. Play that back. No one discussed that. You wait till meeting 6. All of a sudden, they're like, nope, Tiffany's on maternity leave. Boom, TTV now sits. Paused onboarding. How many paused onboardings do you have? That's another indicator. Paused onboardings. Okay, making sense, everybody? Okay. So TTV is everything, but how you can get to there is everything that I'm talking about. Your bosses, whoever you're the boss, everybody says TTV or time to value. But one, you got to make sure it's authentic. Two, they're all not going to be the same. That's the other shenanigans. Sorry, sometimes I get on that's kind of like, you won't have the same TTV by client type. Just helping you out there. Your hospitals are going to take way longer than your manufacturing clients. I don't care. More than, like, literally it will. Very unlikely that the time to value by customer type is the same, unless your product is very basic. Because it's just not going to happen. So be fair to your team is what I'm saying. Also burnouts. If your team is always the team that's like, we got so much going on, I can barely take a day off, or what, like, I I'm 50 now, and I used to respect that a lot of the times, of like, man, the team is just like working like crazy. And I do respect them. I'm not saying my team isn't working like crazy, but I've done something as a leader, and I feel bad for them, because it should not be that hectic. Does that make sense to everybody? Like, it shouldn't be that chaotic. Every once in a while, for sure. Real world stuff, I'm not gonna. But it really shouldn't be that chaotic. You have a process problem, expectation problem. Maybe your product has a problem, like your actual product, or your service has a problem. But if they're burning out like that, and everything's real world, that a lot of stuff is going on. But you know the difference in that tone. If it's like Camp Run Amok, and it's consistently like Camp Run Amok, and eh, you need to peel that back and kind of what are the Eastern Western medicine, right? Um, so we're based in the U.S. So in the U.S., we're great at like all these drugs to cover up all the problems, and instead of actually getting to the root cause, right? Eastern Western medicine philosophies, and a lot of times that's kind of what happens to your teams. It just keeps metastasizing instead of peeling back and really getting to the root problem and solving that problem for everybody on the team. And so if burnout, and again, your company might be growing a lot. I'm not saying that nobody's working hard, but you want them working that hard for successful projects, right? For successful onboardings and being happy about that. Because if not, the team morale is extremely low. I mean, we're recording this on March 20th or 19th or whatever the hell today is. But like, right now, if you're aware, like the TSA is like the people aren't even getting paid and they're asking them to come in, right? Like I can't imagine very positive experiences for anybody enrolled in that, right? And so like that kind of spirit, right? Like you want people to be able to evoke, especially again, because you should be doing consultative onboarding, right? Providing value, providing guidance. But if people are just running around, that's not going to be a good experience for either side of that transaction. So you're saying, okay, yeah, Joe, this kind of makes sense. So let's walk through a couple of things. And again, we have a ton of resources, and if you want to talk more, I can guide you down. But I don't know where everybody's problems lie. But a lot of them, the DNA of teams able to scale, able to continuously grow and do their job well, and the clients onboarding being successful, typically all have this same underlying themes or structure. And again, nothing in onboarding is rocket science either. What we're just able to do and what we've experienced is knowing that all of these pieces kind of work together. And that's kind of the importance, because in onboarding, it's two groups. It's not just your team, it's the 20 people on the other side. And so how do you help them be successful also, right? So it's more complicated from that perspective. So standardizing onboarding frameworks, clearly everybody understands those things. We're very big on milestones and goals and mutual plans, that kind of thing. All of our clients are. A lot of data tracking. Of course, the tools can help automate a ton of that, but always refining. And it's not like refine for the sake of refining. It's just always looping in feedback cycles on a lot of things for continuous improvement, because you can make minor changes all the time and have pretty major impacts on your onboarding, um, overall, right? Like big time. And maybe even some of that trickery that I was talking about earlier, like pre-mortems, or if you don't know what mutual plans are, or centralizing everything into a one clear environment so everybody is communicating. Email is not an onboarding tool, right? Excel is not an onboarding tool. Like they're not, right? And so there's a lot of experiences that are going on with the 20, 40 people involved in these processes. So invest in the right, obviously, enablement. Clearly, we're a group to do that, but it's not about selling you, you know, engage today. This is more about making you successful. And so ultimately, a lot of teams do this. They also do standardization without rigidity. And this is kind of, again, important when I was talking about standardizing everything. Everything can't be templated. A lot can, especially if there's integrations or data might, stuff. But what can be done are a lot of the processes wrapped around those, making sure that things are good. Garbage in, garbage out. If we are collecting data, validating it right away instead of waiting 2 weeks to validate it and finding out it's wrong and then having to go back to the client, or reworks needing to go on because you set the client up wrong. There's ways to stop all of those things. and it's wrapping them around proper processes, proper technology to help with that, basically standardizing the high risk points of the process to basically help you stay out of trouble. But then working with the client, clearly there has to be flexibility and coaching on your end, because again, that's the point. But there has to be, again, what we call an experience in place. And we use a ton of playbooks and templates and all sorts of things to make time on task for the people, limited, but getting still the same benefits. And, again, of course, everybody's in the game of being able to do more with less. I don't care what anybody says, but standardization without rigidity, because it can't, it's, 80-20 rule, guys, 90-10, 80-90% pretty rhythmic, 10% bespoke per client, just because of certain experiences, things. Again, depends on product and service, but that's how you can measure and get visibility as to what's working and not working, in your process overall. Yeah, so the variability piece, honestly, this is one of the challenge points for companies in general, just any company, deploying their own onboarding process, and their onboarding process being successful is putting in the right amount of time and processes to make sure your team is successful, right? And again, you want to eliminate variability. If any, too many jokes I was going to do here, but the point being, there's a reason why, if everybody knows Amazon, the web hoster, right? There's a reason why 99.99% uptime hosting costs that amount, which is super cheap. If no downtime, which is not much more in percent, it gets super expensive, right? And so when I say eliminating variability in your team, you're never going to get to that, right? Like immediately, but having that consistency, because you do want everybody's personality to come out, everybody's coaching ability to your clients coming out. It's embracing that, but it's just also making sure that underlying they're following the expectations, the process, the experience by client type that you desire. Only way you can do that is to centralize everything, execute pretty consistently, right? Have visibility on everything. It's I actually argued with myself on how to frame that, because the variability, I don't mind variability as long as it's wrapped by variability. That makes it's because there's always different experiences. For example, you're integrating at a healthcare and they got Epic instead of, whatever, Oracle. And so that's variability right there. They have Epic or Oracle, and then you start working with them and they're like, oh, we also have Epic and Oracle running together. So now there's another. So it's not that can't happen. It's you have to have kind of the contingency experiences, or the experiences for the most common variability items that are going on. Okay, and I'm that might be a little in the weeds for some of you, but again, high growth companies typically selling into corporations, you know, Fortune 5,000s, 4,000s, 2,000s, 100s. It's a whole different ballgame. Even mid-sized companies now are extremely complex and have pretty dynamic needs. So these all help. And of course, the more you do that, most of our clients see about a 30% in person efficiency. What I mean is time on task. So a lot of this also is by providing this ecosystem, the actual team members of your team are much more efficient also, so that they all kind of intersect. Okay. Um, Kind of trump this a little bit already, creating visibility, all your metrics. It is a onboarding hasn't been that popular for that long. Let's just say that people have always been onboarding, but now people are seeing finally the measured impact of onboarding from churn, revenue generation, cross-selling, upselling, all sorts of stuff. Plus the companies buying stuff now, naturally they're more complex than ever before. And so in high growth companies, why you're high growth is more than likely you're obviously providing some service well, and And now it's the keeping that complexity and being able to continuously scale and provide what feels like bespoke experiences to each of your client types. But again, always having kind of a see something, say something. Smokey the Bear is one of our kind of major things because it is now directly tied to revenue. So straight line to revenue instead of dotted line. I think everybody knows what I mean by that. And so onboarding is getting that important in many of your companies because it dramatically ties to revenue. CROs are very concerned about onboarding now. It used to just be a function in many cases as an offshoot of sales in many groups. And so a lot is changing. And in order to demand your team members to justify your team, your expenses and everything, being able to create visibility to all the performance metrics, how the team is growing, just like a sales leader would with the sales team, you need to be doing that as a CS leader or an onboarding leader for this entire experience also. So it is elevating the role of many um, individuals because of how important it is. Um, so at the end of the day, you want to scale with confidence, right? That's ultimately what we're talking about here. So no one likes chaos. Um, when you're ramping new people and growing a lot, you want to plug them into an optimal environment because a junior onboarding person on your team can seem like a senior onboarding leader with the right infrastructure set up and processes and experiences. Obviously, about customer outcomes. Again, for us, that's typically a coached and mutual experience for setting them up, whatever it is. Of course, keeping you operationally efficient and yeah, I'm predicting. I mean, all the above, right? Predictable operate. Like, that's what I would say. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah. And again, it's just about setting stuff up. So the call to action kind of here, especially if you're right in the mix of it, is of course just taking a lot of these principles and also on our site we have an audit that you can do. But I've talked about a lot of the things here, and it's just about slowly working against identifying kind of the biggest risk areas, and then tying that all into a repeatable and scalable environment, right? Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you start looking, right? Or if you ever been out like on a hike or something, and there's a moose or a bear or something, you didn't even see it, but then as somebody's like, okay, look at that, then look over, to the next big tree down, and all of a sudden you're like, holy cow, now I see it. So sometimes it's just the optics of looking at your team in a little bit different process. And again, a very important piece of this too. I should just through experience and obviously tons of yeah, tons and tons of experience, but is don't worry about trying to solve it all at once. So frequently I'll CEO will call me up or a leader or whatever, and they're like, Joe, we want to become a partner of yours at a certain point in time, but right now I gotta break this thing down a little bit more. What do you recommend? I always go with obviously take your most common client type you have and focus just on that. Don't worry. Yes, you will eventually get to all of this, but how can you simply attack one client type for one product? If you have multiple products, just look at your highest volume product or your most profitable product would probably be better, and kind of look at that process itself and get into the rhythm of looking at it from that way about what would that optimal experience look like, you know, and then obviously we help obviously take your vision and our combined visions and help you get that over the line. And then you kind of I always say Kia, Camry, and then Cadillac. And then so eventually you'll get to an Escalade with 20-inch rims on it, but you don't have to get there tomorrow. But what you can do is start providing better experiences very, very quickly for onboarding very soon. By this time next quarter, already be doing that. and then incrementally building out from there and getting better and better over time. Hopefully that makes sense. Don't try to change the world in a day. Just start, and it will progress accordingly. All right. So, and of course, track yourself. One thing I do offer, kind of this is gated quite a bit, but in the high growth, we have a lot of clients that, yeah, there's just they don't know what they don't know, and they're trying to help build a strategy internally with their team members if they have a lot of them. A lot of growth companies don't, but they asked me to come in and do a presentation around these topics, obviously the entire life cycle, and helping the team understand how it's all interconnected and value, which obviously, if you're a leader here, it helps supports your vision for that. I do that for free. I do that because so much of those people have, obviously, a lot of them have become clients, but a lot of them are friends. And I've been involved in a lot of high growth entities in general. And so it's just fun to be a part of. I've been there, done that, a lot of challenges, a lot of opportunities. Again, keeping it simple, but I do offer sessions on that. And this will be in here. And that actually goes to literally my calendar directly. But before we do that 1.5 hour session, I like to do a planning meeting with you, to understand what your vision and goals are so that I can best support your vision and bring a lot of reality to people, like the 120-day post launch, which is the adoption phase. Like a lot of people struggle with that. Just, yeah, there's just a lot of these things here. So more than willing to obviously do that with any of you, on yeah, anybody. So yeah. And like I said, there'll be a recap to this. I'll include some of those resources. And then I also will, on this website, everything on the screen here, that's where there's a ton of additional resources about everything I've talked about here. So again, Joey Connect, senior leader with Proteus. Hope there were some nuggets of knowledge for this for you guys. And yeah, we'll see you on the flip side. Look forward to chatting more. And again, don't hesitate on a lot of the other resources are good, and lion's share of the stuff I tried to share is educational and then actionable, meaning you can do something with that immediately. So again, appreciate everybody's time and energies, and we'll see you on the next presentation. Thanks, group.